Hello and welcome. This is Mouse Gunner, and we're back with some more Automation, the car company tycoon game. Continuing on with the campaign roleplay of the Edison car company in 2002. And the model we're going to be looking at in this video is the Edison Star, which is our mid-size family sedan. So starting off with the base trim of the Star, and we're going to have 4 overall trims and 2 engines. We're going to have 2 inline-4 engines and 2 V6 engines. We'll take a look at the engines a little bit later, but first let's start off with the body selection. So the body I chose for the Star is this body right here. And the setup I went with as far as the chassis goes, so I went with a monocoque chassis, AHS steel, front transverse, McPherson strut in the front and torsion beam in the rear, and corrosion-resistant steel as our panel material. As far as styling goes, I'm just going to do a quick showing of that. Again, keeping things more or less simple. And the engine mounting, as we discussed, is transverse front-wheel drive. Let's go ahead and take a look at the engine. So the first engine we have is an inline-4 2.4-liter engine that has aluminum silicone, both block and head. We're adding on VVL, and we have a single overhead cam with 3 valves per cylinder. We have cast iron, I-beam steel, and forged, and this is required if we want to keep our parts intact with the use of the VVL. Compression comes in at 9. And we have our cam profile and our VVL profile being different. So we do see a little bit of that bump in the torque curve that we saw with the Luna. And we also have VVT. Moving along, this is naturally aspirated. And multi-point EFI. For the fuel system with a regular fuel. And here's my fuel mixture, ignition timing, and RPM limit setup. As far as the exhaust, we have short cast headers and a 3-way cat with 1 reverse flow muffler. The end result is we produce 161 horsepower and 141 foot-pounds of torque. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the trim setup. And we have, at first, a 5-speed manual transmission. And I set up that 5th gear as an economy gear, going beyond the estimated top speed to maximize fuel efficiency. We have a 0 to 62 time of 10 seconds and 27.2 miles per gallon. I did go with a viscous LSD here, which I did change the Luna to include that, but this I had already made that selection, which is one of the reasons why I talked myself into that selection with the Luna. As far as the tire setup goes, we have medium compound road, 185 in both front and rear, and steel rim material, and 16-inch rims. Okay, we have a solid disc 2-piston in the front and solid disc 1-piston in the rear. The front brakes are slightly bigger than the rear brakes, and as a result, we do have a little bit of brake fade, but not too bad. Moving along to the aerodynamics. We have a fully clad under tray, and we only have a little over 10 cooling than we have for required cooling, as I normally do. 5 seats, standard interior, standard entertainment, power steering, and ABS as standard, as well as standard safety. For the suspension, I went with standard springs, a gas monotube dampers, and a passive sway bar. And the suspension setup is more or less the normal preset with a little bit of tweaking. For instance, stiffening up the front dampers is something that I note does pretty good things for you as far as smoothing out the bumpiness of the ride. At least with a front-engined, front-wheel drive layout. But it also works on a lot of other layouts as well, usually front-engined. Okay, let's take a look at the test track. So we have a top speed of 142 miles an hour. Weight distribution is front heavy, but not as bad as what we saw on the Luna. We're a little under 3,000 pounds. And we already discussed 0 to 62 time. So let's go ahead and run our time. And we have a time of 1 minute 38.38. And the direct comparison we're getting there is the automatic version of the Luna, which this is definitely quicker than, but not by a whole lot, honestly, because I believe the manual transmission version of the Luna was like 1 minute 40 and a half. So we're maybe losing a couple seconds. Or improving by a couple seconds, I guess is the better way to say that. Let's go ahead and jump into the automatic version of the inline 4 engined trim. So we have a 4-speed automatic with a very different setup. I went with a more aggressive setup, so we don't really have that economy gear going beyond the estimated top speed as much. And as a result, we have a little bit worse 0 to 62 time, actually a second of difference. And we also have worse fuel economy because of that more aggressive setup. The tire setup is more or less the same, as is the brakes, the cooling airflow, the interior, the suspension. And let's go ahead and get into our test track and see the difference. So we lose some top speed, 135.9. We gain a little bit of weight, I believe, and according to G's, I think a little bit worse. And our track time, no surprise to anyone, is a little bit slower. Very comparable to the manual transmission version of the Luna. Pretty darn close. And we lost a little over 2 seconds, which we saw with the Luna comparing the manual transmission versus the automatic. So that's usually the trend we see. Okay, let's jump into the next trim, which is going to be our first trim to have our V6 engine. Let's go ahead and jump into the engine first. So this is a V6 with aluminum silicone block and head. It comes in at 3 liters, and we have a single overhead cam with 3 valves per cylinder. Again, we have cast iron, I-beam steel, and forged. Compression comes in at 9.5, and we have the cam profile and VVL profile. This also does have VVT. This is naturally aspirated, and we use multi-point EFI with regular fuel. And this is my fuel mixture, ignition timing, and RPM limit setup. For the exhaust, short cast header, 3-way cat, reverse flow muffler. And the end result is 200 horsepower and 173 foot-pounds of torque. So let's jump into the trim setup. So we have an automatic for both versions of the V6 trims. There is no manual transmission for these trims or for that engine. And this is set up more or less the same kind of way that the other automatic was. So the 4 gears being more acceleration gears, no economy gear here. And the end result is we have a 0 to 62 time of 9.1 seconds and 22.2 miles per gallon. We also have that viscous LSD, which we had before. Tire setup is going to be unchanged. We do have quite a bit more wheel spin here, though. And the brakes are going to be slightly upgraded. So the brake sizes and the brake type are the same, but we switch from a solid disc to a vented disc to remove the brake fade. As far as aerodynamics go, we do require more cooling airflow than we did with the inline 4 because it's a more powerful engine. So we do need a little bit more cooling airflow for that engine. But otherwise, more or less the same. The interior is going to be set up the same. And the suspension is going to be different because of a difference in weight, but set up with the same idea. Go ahead and jump into the test track here. We can see we're a little bit more front heavy, but we do have more top speed, 146.3 miles an hour. And we already mentioned the 0 to 62 time is much improved. So I think we can expect a quicker time here. And that is indeed the case. 1 minute 36.82. And finally, our last trim is the premium version of the star. Now this is going to have the V6 with a similar setup. I think I went a little bit more aggressive on the spacing to try and limit the difference in the 0 to 62 time from all the weight added in with some of the options we added onto this trim. But the tire setup is more or less going to be the same. Wheel spin is a little bit less because of that weight addition, but it's still higher than we saw with the inline-4 versions. The brakes, again, are the same as the other V6 trim, as is the cooling airflow. But the interior is going to be where we see a lot of differences here. So we not only have a premium interior and premium entertainment, we also have selected traction control and electronic stability control, which are going to really help in a number of ways. As a matter of fact, we can see that really quickly. So traction control is going to help in quite a bit in drivability. Well, actually, electronic stability control is going to help the most, and then traction control a slight amount. We do lose a little bit in off-road ability, though, as a result. And the suspension setup is going to be slightly different as well because of that increase in weight. Hop into the test track here. So top speed is now 146 miles an hour. So not a whole lot of a difference, but I think a slight decrease. And our weight is almost 3,100 pounds. And and I think the cornering Gs are a little bit worse as well. Let's go ahead and do our time. All right. For our last time, we have 1 minute 37.38. All right, let's go ahead and get into the project setup. So, more or less the same idea that I used with the Luna. So, more of an efficient build, trying to get these designed as quickly as possible so we can get the numbers out there quickly. Not as much of a learning project for us. Same for the engine. Factory is going to be more or less the same setup as we had for the Luna, so a large factory setup. We have 80 for the automation, and we're producing as many as we can, but we have more trims to produce. So I went with the 2.4-liter manual transmission version being the second most produced, the premium version being just behind that, so we have 100 and 150 vehicles being produced. The V6 is the next produced trim, so 300, and then the automatic version with the inline-4 is the next most produced with 400. Okay, so moving along, we have two engine setups going on here. We have the engine for the inline-4, and we only need about 550 engines. So as a result, I brought the shifts down to match that number. And we see a similar thing with the V6s. So we need even less of them, only about 400. So the shifts go down as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the price and our market share. So I have a 5% markup on all these trims, and this is the premium trim. So we might as well keep that because it's selected. But the categories we're doing well in is utility sport. Don't ask me why. City premium, that makes sense, and fun premium. We'd also expect, and we do pretty well in family premium, and we do decently in family sport as well, although we weren't really necessarily going for that. Family, we don't do so as well, but I would assume that affordability is a big part to play on that. And we do decently well in the pony segment, as we always do, and quite well in the muscle and sports budget segments as well. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the next trim. I'm going to start with the base trim and then work our way up. We already looked at the premium trim, but we'll work our way through the base trims up to the V6. So this is a $15,000, a little over $15,000, and we're hitting family, sport, fun, and pony. We do pretty well in family, commuter, these are the segments we're really looking for, and city eco, which is another nice segment to hit. And again, we're doing well in pony, pony budget, muscle, and sports budget. Moving on to the automatic. We're going to see a little bit of difference here. So now we're doing well in family sport, family, and pony. Which this is really the market segment we're trying to hit the most, and it's good to see that. This is the vehicle we assume we're going to sell on the largest numbers, so hitting the market segment we want to be selling to with the model we want to be selling in the most numbers is definitely what we're looking for. All right, finally we have the standard V6 trim, which is a little over 16,000. And again, we're hitting a utility sport, family sport, and pony market segments. But we're also doing well in the family, commuter, city premium, and muscle, sports budget, fun premium, and fun. All right, so with that wrapped up, let's go ahead and do a comparison with the only other model we have produced so far, the Luna. So as far as drivability, we take quite a bit of a hit here with the Star. We're not doing quite as well with our manual transmission versus their manual transmission, so 2 points off from the Luna to the Star. But we're doing better in sportiness, more powerful engine. Comfort is about the same. Prestige is a little bit more, and I would assume so because we're probably going to have a higher top speed for sure, and a more powerful engine. Safety is up because of the increase in weight. Practicality goes down a little bit. Off-road ability stays about the same. Utility is a little bit of a hit, but not far off of what we saw with the Luna. And reliability is identical. As far as fuel economy, we're not doing quite as well as the Luna, but that makes sense. I mean, this is a lighter vehicle. It's set up more to be economical, so it makes sense we're a little bit off there. And we are heavier, as we already mentioned. We produce a little bit more emissions, and it takes more time to build and is more expensive. All of those things make perfect sense. Let's see if we can get some more comparisons here. So our automatic versus the Luna's automatic, the Star versus the Luna. Again, the Luna takes the cake here, but we went out in prestige and safety and sportiness. So our best, most drivable model is our premium model, which comes in with 54, which is above the drivability that we got with the Luna, the best that we got with the Luna. But we also have to consider the premium upgrades that we did, as well as the stability control and traction control that are definitely going to help in drivability. But we're not too far off with the standard V6 here from that number, 50 to 51, so that's nice to see. Okay, I think that more or less is a comparison with the models we have so far. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This is Mouse Gunner, signing out.